Welcome to the video companion for episode 62 of the Classic Horrors Club podcast. This video contains highlights, video clips, and bonus features from the full podcast, which you can find on SoundCloud at the link shown below. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, because as sure as my name is Jeff Owens, it's going to be a thriller.
All right. Listen, girl, I'm not like all these other fellas. It's close to midnight. Something evil's lurking in the dark. Under the moonlight, you see a sight that almost stops your heart. You try to scream, oh, but terror takes a sound before you make it. Yeah, you start to freeze as horror looks you right between your eyes. You're paralyzed, 'cause this is thriller night, and no one's gonna save you from the beast about to strike. You know it's thriller night. You're fighting for your life inside a killer thriller tonight.
Hey everybody in YouTube land, this is Jeff Owens from ClassicHorrors.club.
And this is Richard Chamberlain from kccinephile.com and monstermoviekid.wordpress.com.
This video is going to be a true companion to this month's audio podcast of the Classic Horrors Club podcast, where we go into full details about the television series Thriller. This companion, we each watched 2 episodes, and we're going to give you our thoughts about that, throw some clips in. So a little bit different, but still, like I said, goes with the podcast, and we hope you'll give that a listen. Richard, do you want to start out and just kind of tell us what is Thriller? What was it for someone that may not have heard of it?
Well, on the podcast, we're going to go into some of the other anthology shows that Karloff did that kind of led up to Thriller. Thriller is probably the one he's most famous for. 2 seasons worth of 67 episodes. And Karloff is the host. It's an hour-long anthology series that started off being more crime drama thriller, but by about midway through season 1 began to shift gears and become more horror related. And that's really where the show got its notoriety from, with its best episodes coming from the middle to latter part of the first season and throughout the second season. Some amazing horror stories, many of which you will find were written or adapted by stories written by Robert Bloch. In fact, I think 3 of the 4 that we covered, I think, were Robert Bloch stories, who you might know from Psycho. So, Thriller was a series that, as with all anthologies, might be a little uneven. There's always the good and the bad. But it was fun because Karloff not only served as the host, but he also starred in several episodes. And on the podcast, I talk about some of the additional episodes that I've seen. Before the podcast recording, I've seen 18 episodes of the series, which really all, with the exception of a couple, were first-time viewings for me. This is a series that I didn't get a chance to see much back in the day. I've had the DVD box set sitting on the shelf for quite a while, but now I'm finally diving into it. It's going to be something that Carla and I will be watching throughout the month of October for the Halloween season, and probably into November. There's a lot of episodes to work through, but the ones I've seen so far are great. And I know the 4 that we cover here are a lot of fun and are typically considered 4 of the best episodes of the series. There's a lot of different lists out there that we encourage you to kind of check out. Listen to the ones we talk about. Do some checking out for yourself, because this is a really fun series.
And I have not seen as many episodes as Richard. Coincidentally, the one I had seen before we did the podcast was your first episode that you're going to talk about, right?
Yes, The Hungry Glass from January 3rd, 1961.
A beautiful young face in the mirror, a pitiful old face at the door. Could they have been one and the same? Some people say that mirrors never lie. Others say that they do, that they lie, they cheat, they kill. Some say that every time you look in one, you see death at work. But most of us see only what we want to see. And perhaps it's better not to see too deeply into the darkness behind our mirrors. For there live things beyond our imagination, as sure as my name is Boris Karloff. But if you're skeptical, stay with me and watch The Hungry Glass with those others who doubt. William Shatner, Joanna Hayes, Russell Johnson, and Elizabeth Allen. Oh, you'll be perfectly safe. That is, if you turn your own mirrors to the wall and make sure that your television screen casts no reflection.
Obviously, I chose this one because it's got William Shatner in it. But I had seen this one before and I remembered enjoying it. It is one that often pops up on a lot of best of lists. William Shatner and Joanna Hayes play Gil and Marcia Thrasher. They have bought a kind of a mansion that's on the cliff by the ocean. In this house, it was previously owned by Laura Bellman. Her husband built her the house in the 1860s. And she was a bit of a vain woman. She loved to look at herself in the mirror. And as she got older, she became obsessed with mirrors. And to the extent that she got so wrapped up in herself that she began to see herself as a younger person in the mirror. Ultimately, she, ended up falling through a mirror, falling to her death, which is where we now come fast forward to when the Thrashers purchased the home. We find that this is a supposedly a haunted house that previous owners have not met with a pleasant demise. And we have Russell Johnson playing real estate agent Adam Talmadge, being very unprofessor-like in this performance. But he sells the house. He knows of this story, but he doesn't think much of it. But we find out there may be something to it as we discover that Gil, he's had some issues, kind of a foreshadowing of the Nightmare at 20,000 feet. And so the question is what he's starting to see, is it real or is it not real? He's seeing these shadowy figures. They're kind of beckoning. It's pretty creepy. It's kind of like it's a ghost story, but with a bit of a twist because you've got these ghostly images. And I guess we'll talk about spoilers. Can we kind of cover that in the podcast, or do we want to do spoiler free for the video? What do you think?
Yeah, let's go spoiler free.
Okay,
Take
so
it up
spoiler.
a bit.
So suffice to say that maybe Gil is not as I don't want to say disturbed, but maybe not as stressed as it's made out to be. There's definitely a very creepy twist ending that right up to the very end, where things might be more of a ghostly manner than everyone else thinks. But there's also a kind of a fun twist with the mirrors. This is a really well-made, creepy episode. The screenplay and direction was by Douglas Hayes, who is the husband of Joanna Hayes, who played Marcia Thrasher. Shatner is not at full-blown Shatner mode yet. This is early on in his career. He does come back in another story later on in the season where he's a bit more like Shatner, as we know Shatner can possibly sometimes be. He doesn't go that far, but he definitely gets a bit crazy, over the top. And I don't know, this was a really fun episode from the time period in that first season where things were starting to change over from being just straightforward crime drama thrillers to a bit more horror related and definitely this would classify this as a kind of a good old-fashioned ghost story with a twist, and I definitely would recommend it. What's your first one?
Yeah, my first one's Pigeons from Hell. It was episode 36 of the first season. It aired on June 6th, 1961.
The swamp is alive, crawling with creatures of death. Creatures that lurk, camouflaged in the undergrowth, waiting patiently for an unsuspecting victim. And our young friend was alarmed by a flight of pigeons. Harmless, you say? Well, you'll see that he has good cause for alarm. For those were no ordinary pigeons. They were the pigeons from hell. That is both the title and the substance of our story. Spirits come back from the dead to guard their ancestral home against intruders. Spirits that in life fed on evil and now in death return to feed upon the living. Return each night, driven relentlessly by the spell of a terrible curse. In our story, the living, I mean the players, are Brandon DeWilder, Crayon Denton, and David Worf. Join us now as night is falling in the old house where evil dwells. Two brave young brothers dare to intrude.
This was the first adaptation of a Robert E. Howard short story. And Pigeons from Hell, I don't know how familiar you are with it. I believe it's fairly well known. It also is pretty much a ghost story. You talk about the twist ending. I don't know, Thriller was particularly known for twist endings, and I don't really know if Pigeons from Hell has a twist ending. That's one of the things about it that I kind of didn't like, was I didn't really understand what happened at the end. But anyway, such as it is, two brothers are in the South traveling. They're going to go to a Civil War reenactment, and they get stranded when their car gets stuck. They decide to spend the night in this big spooky house. And from there on, I guess not a spoiler because it happens early, they're asleep. One of the brothers wakes up. His other brother is gone. He goes upstairs looking for him, and his brother, covered in blood, comes towards him with an axe. So he runs, he falls in the woods, knocks himself unconscious. He's taken in by a gentleman. And from there, they decide to go back and see what's happening at the house. You said we talked about the episodes being padded, and that's mostly in my other episode, but I think it's padded here too, because they kind of come and go a couple times from the house. And that is one of the things that bothered me about the episode, is they won't go get help. They won't go into town. And this man keeps telling the boy that, number one, they're going to think you killed your brother if we go in, or they're not going to believe you that pigeons appear and strange things happen. So instead of going into town and getting help, they spend the night at the house. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but that doesn't really matter, because this episode is all about the atmosphere and the mood, the lighting, the music. It is truly creepy and does have some really scary moments. So for that, it is definitely worth watching. And I really enjoyed it. It is truly scary.
Again, people making choices they shouldn't be making. They need to watch more TV and movies. But then we wouldn't have TV and movies to watch, I guess, because people would be making the right choices, and we'd be doing a romantic comedy dramatic podcast. So if it wasn't for
we wouldn't be
choices,
doing that.
we wouldn't. Parasite Mansion, another fun episode. This one, again, pops up on a lot of people's list.
Hospitality. Good old Southern hospitality. That's what I like about the South. This is a room in Parasite Mansion, the name of our story tonight, and home of the Harrods, a family plagued for generations with a horrible curse. Parasite Mansion is a terrible place to visit, but obviously an excellent place in which to die. Featured in our story tonight are Jeanette Nolan, James Griffith, Beverly Washburn, Tommy Nolan, and Pippa Scott. One of these poor unfortunates is doomed to die before your eyes. Oh, don't try to guess. You might be right, and that would spoil all the fun.
Parasite Mansion actually was just a few episodes before Pigeons from Hell, so it comes from like the last block of episodes in season 1. We're definitely full-blown horror mode by this point. Pippa Scott plays Marcia Hunter, who takes a wrong turn and ends up getting kind of taken by the best way to describe him is kind of a crazy, almost not quite a hillbilly family, but a family that's got some issues and living in this creepy old house. She's basically being held, and she gets to know too much about what's going on because apparently, everyone's just a little quirky. We've got the granny who is played wonderfully by Jeanette Nolan. She's just kind of always cackling and laughing, and she's a little off kilter. You've got James Griffith as Victor Herod, who probably the most sane of the bunch, and that's not saying much. Tommy Nolan, who we had seen previously in the season, going around shooting people, or attempting to shoot people with a gun, is going around attempting to shoot people with a gun in this episode. We've also got young Beverly Washburn playing the young Lolly Herod. And what we get in the first part of this is that Lolly is apparently being plagued by essentially a poltergeist of sorts. She's got weird things happening around her, and the family is kind of, I guess, sheltering themselves from the rest of the world because they don't want the rest of the world to know about what's going on. But not everything is as it seems, and there is definitely a twist ending to this as well that I'm not sure that I saw coming, but it was definitely a lot of fun. A little weird at one point how it kind of wraps up, but nonetheless, definitely another fun episode. Very atmospheric. The creepy dark house kind of scenario with the weird family. There's this scene where they're eating, and I didn't talk about this in the podcast, but I just thought of this. So this is a video exclusive, folks. There's a scene where they're eating dinner around the table, and I almost got a little bit of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 vibe. Remember, they're eating around the table and the one girl is kind of sitting and all the craziness is going around. I think that was in 2, or was that in 1? I can't quite remember. Maybe it was 1. Anyway, I think it was probably in almost every one, right? So you've got the crazy family sitting around the table, and the normal girl is just looking at all the craziness going on. We kind of get that here. Marcia's having this meal with the family, and there's a comment about they're all just kind of like eating with their hands, and I think Granny even mentions something about does our manners shock you? Yeah, definitely Texas Chainsaw vibes there. It's like this crazy family that is dealing with all sorts of stuff. And meanwhile, Granny is just kind of cackling the whole time, and Marcia's just trying to wonder how can I get out of here? Fun, creepy episode. Definitely a fun Halloween-esque episode to watch. I'd recommend it with again a fun twist, which I don't think every episode of Thriller had that. But a lot of them did. A lot of the ones we watched definitely have a kind of a twist ending, and sometimes it's maybe less choreographed than others. Sometimes I think you can kind of see where things are going. Other times they legitimately kind of threw me where they were going. And I think that's the best stories, I think, is where you don't really necessarily see where everything's going. It keeps you guessing till the end. So Parasite Mansion was another very, very fun episode. What was your second episode?
Mine was The Weird Tailor. This was season 2, episode 4. It aired on October 16th, 1961. This was one of those by Robert Bloch. He wrote it based on his short story.
The man cries out in vain. His son cannot come back. That is, no power on earth can bring him back. But then, as sure as my name is Boris Karloff, it was no earthly power that took him, as you have just seen. What just took place behind those doors was strange and terrifying. I wonder just how many of you will have the courage or the curiosity to follow me through them, to witness things even stranger and more terrifying. Our story is called The Weird Tailor, and the fabric of our plot is woven by these distinguished players. Henry Jones, George McGreedy, Abraham Sofair, and Sandra Carr. Yes, my friends, they're all waiting for you behind these doors. So come with me. Come before it's too late.
I'm familiar with this, and we've talked about it on a previous episode of the podcast from the Amicus anthology film Asylum. This is one of the short stories that was in that, and I love that movie. It's my favorite anthology, and it's not my favorite segment, but it's a very good segment, Peter Cushing. So that's what I'm going on as a frame of reference. And this, they really fleshed out a backstory. So this is about a man who loses his son and thinks he can bring him back to life. He's got a book that basically has a pattern for a suit that will, if he puts on the body, bring his son back to life. So he finds a down on his luck tailor to make him this suit. There's very special requirements. It has to be sewn at a certain time of day, can only use certain materials. He has a special cloth that is like a cloth no one has ever seen. Hires the tailor. Well, thing is, he spent all his money buying the book that had this, I keep saying pattern, like you could buy it at the fabric store in one of those little envelopes, but that is, they show pictures of it. It's how to build this suit. He spent all his money buying this book, so he has no money to pay the tailor for the suit. And an accident happens, and this man, Mr. Smith, is killed. I think that's about as far as I'll go with it. A key subplot, parallel plot, is the tailor's wife, who in Asylum has a good relationship with her husband. In this episode, they don't have a good relationship. The husband actually beats his wife. So Thriller has taken it and given a whole, nearly half the episode backstory of Mr. Smith, how his son died, him trying to track down the book, him going to see a medium to try to find a way to bring his son back, that I don't think was really necessary. And even if you just think about the title, The Weird Tailor, the first half or so of the episode, there's no tailor, and you're wondering, what's going on here? Not that you have to tie it so literally to the title, but you kind of get what I'm saying is I guess it's nice to know the detail, but I don't think it was necessary. And this is one of the episodes that I think would have been more effective without that backstory, if it just jumped right in and kind of took the same path that Asylum did. We talked on the podcast, we don't know if Asylum was trimmed or if Thriller was embellished. We don't know what Robert Bloch's original story was, but in either case, to me, the shorter the sweeter, and I did prefer Asylum, but nevertheless, an entertaining story on Thriller.
But Thriller is still, it's a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. I highly recommend you listen to the full podcast because we give all sorts of background info. We talk about some of the extra episodes that I've seen. We do spoilers on the podcast, so beware, which I think is fine. We don't always do that, but I think in this case, we were wanting to do a deeper dive into Thriller, so I think the spoilers are fine. But if you don't, then you know what? Go back, watch the episode, or go start off, watch the episodes, and then go listen to the podcast, and then you can kind of hear our thoughts on it.
And Richard, you have a bit of memorabilia, I guess, or something you'd like to show?
I do have a few things, yes. So Thriller was a comic book. Thriller did get canceled after 2 seasons, so it ended its run in 1962. In the fall of 62, Gold Key Comics put out the first issue of Boris Karloff Thriller, obviously in the mix before Thriller got canceled. It was 2 issues. It was known as Boris Karloff Thriller. And then with issue 3, it became Boris Karloff Tales of Mystery. Ran for 97 issues all the way up until 1979, so long after Boris Karloff left us. I do have random issues from the series, but I have specifically the first 3. So we're going to see how this works with the background. This is the first episode, or the first issue. That's about as high as I can go, of Thriller. We have, shameless plug, t-shirt there, available at TeePublic. We have issue 2 of Thriller. And then we have issue 3, Boris Karloff, Tales of Mystery. These early issues, they're especially the first 2 issues, 80 pages each. Now they were 25 cents, so this was actually, was not the average price for comics back then, because with issue 3, it became 12 cents. But still, 80 pages for a quarter is insane by today's standards. And, quite a few stories, like 6, 7, 8, 9 stories in the issues. We don't know who the authors were, the artists were, because that's something Gold Key really didn't do well. And so I'm sure somebody out there may be able to fill in some of the gaps. But also the first 2 issues are they have harder cardboard covers. So I'm going to be reading or rereading this Thriller series and the Boris Karloff comics that I have for the month of October. I was like, you know what? I always kind of try to do some horror comics, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And so I'm going to make it through my stock. Like I said, I don't have the complete series, but I've got a nice, healthy stack of comics here. So, that's going to be a fun read throughout the month of October for the Halloween season. It kind of kept the legacy alive after the show ended. The show went into syndication. It lives on now with a DVD release, Thriller the Complete Series. It's still in print, a little pricey at $80, but finding it streaming is going to be a bit trickier. You're going to have to do some seeking out. As we speak, all the episodes are available on a YouTube channel.
Well, this was fun. It was a little bit different. Again, we encourage you to listen to the full podcast. There should be a link below. And also join each of us on our blogs this month as we do the countdown to Halloween.
I think that's all I've got, other than to wish everyone a happy Halloween. Everything is still a little crazy out there, so stay safe, take care, tune into the podcast. Let us know how you think of these videos. Share your thoughts. These are just companion pieces. They're not meant to replace the podcast, but to supplement them. And this month, I think, is definitely an example where what we offer here, and occasionally the exclusive on the video that you don't get. So you don't want to miss out. Have a happy, happy Halloween season.
Yes, happy Halloween. We'll see you next time.
It's close to midnight, and something evil's lurking in the dark. Under the moonlight, you see a sight that almost stops your heart. You try to scream, terror takes us out before you make it. Yeah, you start to freeze.